Hi, in this video I am going to create a simple Hello World HTTP server in C. I already have the necessary header files included, also defined the port on which the server is going to run, and the buffer size for the client request to store temporarily. So now I need an integer to store the file descriptor for the socket that I am going to create for the server. I name the integer server underscore fd. I also need a struct to store the IP and the port details for the server. Now before I populate this struct, I want to make sure there is no garbage data inside this struct. So I run this method memset. I pass the reference for the struct. Okay, so this ensures that all the garbage data is wiped out and it is clean, only filled with zeros. And now I can populate this struct. And here this AF underscore inet means I'm going to use IPv4. And this line means I want the server to listen to any network interface in the system. And finally for the port, and here I am using this host to network short, this helper function. This function converts any short number from post byte order to network byte order. Now I am going to create the socket. And this means I am going to use TCP because HTTP is TCP under the hood. Now if the socket creation is successful, then it is going to return a file descriptor. So I will assign that file descriptor value to the variable I created earlier. And in case the socket creation is failed or there is some error, then it is going to return -1. So I need to check that also. I'll just check if it is less than 0. And if it is that, then I can just say there is an error and exit from the program. Now I can call the bind method, and this is expecting the file descriptor of the socket and the reference for the struct that I created earlier and the size of that struct. And if this bind method runs successfully, then it is going to return 0. And if it is not, there is some error, then it is going to return -1. So I need to check that. If this is less than 0, then there is some problem and I need to exit the program. And if this bind method ran successfully, then I can finally listen. And here this listen method also will return -1 if there is some error. And if it started listening successfully, then I can print the message that the server is listening. Okay. Now I can finally wait for the client to connect, and for that I will run this accept method. Okay, this is expecting the file descriptor of the server socket and a new struct for the client and the size of that struct. Okay, this is the reference of that size. Okay, let's create a new struct for the client. So I will declare a new variable called client addr. Also, I need a new file descriptor for the client socket. Okay, passed the reference for this client underscore addr. Now I need to pass the size, pass the reference for the length. For that, let me create another variable. Here I pass the reference for that length. And if it is successful, then it will return the file descriptor for the accepted socket, means the client socket, or -1. So first I will assign the value returned by this accept to the variable I just created, client underscore fd. Now I am going to check if client underscore fd is less than 0. That means there is some error getting client fd, and I exit the program. And if the accept is successful, means I get the client file descriptor, I can finally read the client request. And before I read, I need to declare a variable, the buffer, where I store the client request. Now I can read from the client file descriptor to this buffer. I think I need to check the manual for the read. This is the client file descriptor. This is the buffer and the size. So what I can do, I can declare a variable to the buffer, and the size should be. Now after reading the client request, I can just print it in the console. So print f the client request, two new line characters, and the string, and again two new line characters. Okay, and print whatever it is in the buffer, which is the client request. Now as I have got a request from the client, I want to send a response back to the client, and for that I need to first have the response ready, and I'm going to create a very basic HTTP response with status code 200. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 characters long. So the content length will be 11. I think this is it. I can just write this response to the client file descriptor. So, okay. I need to close it first. Done. Now, write this to the client file descriptor. pass the response, and the length of this response is this. Okay, I hope this writes to the client file descriptor and the client gets this response back. Finally, close the client file descriptor and close the server file descriptor also. And it is done. Write and quit. Now I will compile it and see if there is some errors. Okay, I hope there is no error. Now running the binary. The server is listening on port 8080. Make some request. Localhost 8080. Okay, unsupported. So I think there is some error I have done. There is some issue with this response, I guess. So let me just check it from the internet. I hope this works fine this time. Huh. Yes. Now I got this hello world. That's fine, but the server is no longer running. So I need to do one more thing. Maybe I can write a infinite loop while this and keep this whole block inside that infinite loop. Okay. Now the server will run infinitely. Okay, it is running on port 8080. I can make a request. I get a response. I can make a request again. Again, I get a response. So the main limitation for this server is that it cannot handle two clients at the same time. So maybe in the next video, I will work on that and see how I can make this server asynchronous.